Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast, podcast number 264. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, April the 16th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. We have a treat for you today. We have a guest on the podcast. He's been on the podcast several times before. He's an adventurer. He's a Renaissance man. You name it, he's done it. Our guest today is Mr. Jerome Koenigsfeld. Jerome, welcome back to the show.
Good morning, James.
Now, you've been on the show numerous times, and we've discussed your adventures. For those of you who haven't heard, I'm sure most of them have, but for those of you that haven't heard, when you were younger, back in the 1960s, I believe, you made a trip from Europe all the way to Singapore and beyond that took several years, basically living as a native, going through every place in Western Europe, Eastern Europe, into Asia, into India, Pakistan, Nepal, and further west. However, I heard a story about you. Now, you did this as a younger man in the 1960s, correct?
Yeah, 1968 to 73.
Exactly. So for 5 years, you basically lived off the land with the natives of the country that you were in. But I heard from a friend of yours that you had also been to Belize in Central America. And I said, well, Jerome never told me about that story. He said he was always in Europe and Asia. He said, no. This was fairly recently. And it was. You weren't a young man. You were an older man. How old were you when you took this adventure to Central America?
66.
66 years old. And how old are you now, if I may ask?
77.
Okay. So at age 66, you decided to take still another adventure. That's what we're going to explore on the podcast today. I will invite the listeners, if they want to follow along with the adventure. Open up Google Maps and Bing Maps. And when Jerome talks about a certain place, you may or may not want to follow along on your computer looking at the maps. If you don't want to, that's fine. It's not going to take away from the podcast. However, if you do want to follow along, it helps put a little bit of a visual with the audio. So without further ado, let's talk about your adventure. Why would a 66-year-old man decide to just take an adventure to Central America? And by the way, for those of you who maybe listen, well, what the heck? I've been to Belize. Just so you know, when Jerome goes someplace, he doesn't book the Hilton Hotel and go to the resort and go on the sightseeing tours. Tell the listeners briefly, Jerome, what a vacation for you consists of.
Well, no reservations, no plans. Just go and see what I find and where I end up and what I do.
And so you get on the tour bus and take the tour bus where they want you to go, right?
No.
How do you get from point A to point B?
Well, I did take taxis from the airport into Belize City, mm-hmm. And back out to the airport when I left. But that's all. I walk. Yeah. I do a lot of walking. Thousands of miles I have walked.
And that's the best way to see anything, on foot.
I remember it better. I know where I'm at. I don't get lost. And I like it that way.
Well, first of all, why did you decide to take an adventure like this at age 66 to Belize and Costa Rica?
Okay. A cousin of ours was living in Costa Rica. She invited us all down there if we wanted to take a trip together. This was just for Costa Rica. So because I had friends when I lived in San Francisco that would go to Belize and Guatemala and Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, and they were always telling me how beautiful it was. I said, well, if I'm going down there, I might as well make it a month instead of 10 days and see some of the other parts. And so I had bought instead of carrying just a backpack and going with a backpack, I bought a roller backpack this time. So it was a little more convenient pulling it around through the airport and stuff like that. And I just grabbed my roller backpack and I said, I'm heading out for Belize. I'm gonna see what it's about before I go to Costa Rica.
And how did you get from? And where were you living at that time? San Francisco?
No, not. I'm in Little Rock, in North Little Rock, Arkansas.
Okay, so how do you get from North Little Rock, Arkansas, to Belize?
All right, from Little Rock to Houston, and from Houston to Belize.
I guess that was Continental Airlines in those days?
United
Airline. Okay, got it. And so, and who were you with when you did this?
Myself.
No, so you went with nobody.
Right.
To a country you had never been to a country you'd never been to before.
No, and a lot of stuff you read on the internet, it said it was dangerous and everything, and we'll get into that here later. How actually dangerous it was, and I was kind of worried, but when I got down there, the worries went away. No problems.
Now, Belize is a little bit different than most countries in Central America. It's the old British Honduras, and they speak English there, correct?
Correct. Almost everybody, but they speak Spanish too. But a lot of people speak English.
Okay.
And it was like I said, formerly it was British Honduras. It became Belize in 1973 and full independence in 1981. So, but they were telling how beautiful it was when I got down there. It was pretty run down. I thought it looked like, when I got there, it looked more like what Cuba looked, where you see pictures of Cuba.
Right.
Where everything is painted nice, bright colors and everything, but it looks pretty old.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what kind of shocked me. And so anyway, I got there, and on the plane ride down there, I met a couple of British guys that were traveling. There was another couple there. They might have been from Canada. I'm not sure anymore. And this one British guy, he'd been traveling for 17 years.
Really?
And all he carried was a little cotton bag, a string-drawn bag with a pair of underwear, he said, and another shirt and a pair of pants and his credit card and his cell phone. And that's what he had. And he'd been doing this for 17 years.
Wow.
And it was, and so we landed at the airport there in Belize and took a taxi. And the taxi driver, I had wrote down a whole bunch of hotels that were in Belize City, but I didn't know of any of them. I didn't check them out. I just knew the names of them.
Because when you landed, you had no reservations, correct?
No reservation. I never make reservations. I shouldn't say never, but almost never. Even in the United States, when I travel, I've been all 50 states, and I don't make a reservation one.
So you flew into a foreign country that you had never been to, landed at the airport, and had no idea where you were going to stay that night.
Correct.
Okay. So how did you come about staying at the place in which you stayed?
Well, the taxi driver said this was a good hotel, the Bell Cove, right on Hallover Creek.
Okay.
And so stopped there and looked it over. I liked it. I liked it because of where it was situated in the city there and on that creek. And so I got me a room and grabbed me some bottles. I carry a little backpack inside my backpack always that I can throw bottles of water, and it's got a poncho in it and my kit, first aid supplies and stuff. I always keep that handy. And so I put that on my back and I just started walking around the city, just took off and went walking. And anyway, after I come back to the hotel, they had a sign there that said you could get a tour of Alton Ha, the Mayan ruins.
Okay.
In Belize.
Mm-hmm.
So that first night, I did sign up for that tour. Now, when I say I don't usually take tours, but I did for that.
And that was that's outside the city.
Yeah, that's outside the city. I think on the map, when I looked it up, it said 31 miles, but I think it was more than that. But it takes you like an hour, but the roads are bad too.
Mm-hmm.
An hour one way to get that 31 miles, if that's all it is.
Okay. Well, now let's look on the maps. For those of you who want to follow along, let's go to Google Maps and type in Belize, and then Belize City. I'm looking at 2 airports in Belize City. I'm assuming you flew into the Philip S.W. Golson International Airport.
Yes, that's right. The other one is right on the water, and it's a small airport.
Right. Correct. So Belize City, is that the capital of Belize City?
Yes.
Okay. It's on the western or eastern coast, and it's about halfway down the country. A little bump that goes out into the the Caribbean.
Yes. It looks like kind of like a little ball on the end there.
Okay.
And then so that tour for the Mayan ruins, you follow the Northern Highway.
Okay.
And until you get up to where like I said, Sand Hill.
Yes.
And off to the
Northern Highway breaks off there at Sand Hill.
Then after the Northern Highway, it splits with the Old Northern Highway.
Okay.
And that's where you follow then the Old Northern Highway until you hit Lucky Strike.
Okay, so through the towns of Boston, Chicago.
No, it's the one right below Chicago. Lucky Strike is below Chicago.
Near Rockstone Pond.
That's what Alton Ha means in English, Rockstone Pond.
Okay.
And now the site itself was occupied from 1000 BC to 2000 AD. And the bigger structures were started in like 100 BC, and there's over 500 mounds. And the restoration was started in 1960s and the 60s and 70s.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then there's like 2 plazas because one's older and newer. And Plaza A is the burial mounds, tombs, bathing areas, temples, and altars. And then in Plaza B, it's tombs, and they're dated around 650 AD.
So I'm guessing these because Belize is just below the Yucatan Peninsula. So I'm assuming that these are Maya people as well.
Yes, that whole area there was in Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico was all the Mayans. Now,
are there any theories as to why this the town of Alton Ha was abandoned? I mean, Chichen Itza, they don't know why. People just left. They think maybe the food ran out or there was a disease or something. But is there a theory as to why they left the Alton Ha?
Yeah, our tour guide was a Mayan, part Mayan,
mm-hmm.
And is what happened. They had a bad drought, and it was therefore food.
Okay,
was a problem, and they say they just disappeared. Well, they didn't disappear. There's all kinds of the people there. They're Mayan or part Mayan.
Mm-hmm.
They just became they just spread out because there was no way to feed them anymore, and that's what, I don't know. Some people argue with that, but that's what he said, and it was the drought, and then they just kind of scattered
because they couldn't make it in the city, so they just did what they had to do to survive.
Right.
Okay. So that was the one tour that you went on.
That was the one tour I went on.
Okay.
So on the way to there. Because I was down in the city there, I got picked up first. You're just a small white van, It had, the two front seats, and then it had a bench seat behind, and then two side bench